All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We're looking at a fascinating breakdown of how to survive and, honestly, thrive in what the source text calls the high entropy arena of 2026. Basically, we're talking about a system designed to completely upgrade your mental operating system. If you've ever felt like institutional trust is just collapsing all around us, or that algorithms are constantly harvesting your attention, well, this breakdown is absolutely for you. We're going to walk through a comprehensive field manual that gives you the time-blocked protocols to read the world without illusion, and more importantly, remain completely unruined by all its chaos. The stakes here, they're pretty high. The text drops this line: intellectual agreement is cheap. And man, isn't that the truth? The core argument is that to transition from being just a managed object, someone pushed around by algorithms and external forces, to an actual architect of your own life, you need daily, repetitive execution. Theory just isn't going to cut it. You need a living, breathing code of conduct to maintain what they call your inner citadel.
To break this all down, we're going to trace a chronological day in the life. We'll hit 5 phases. First, the architect's operating system. Then, morning, the inner citadel. Afternoon, the tactical arena. Evening, system restoration. And finally, tragic optimism and resilience.
Okay, phase 1, the architect's operating system. The text describes this as a welding together of 3 specific traits: a stoic spine to bear the weight, a Machiavellian eye to see power dynamics clearly, and missionary hands to actually serve the world. It's a super fascinating combo. So why build this system? It's all about bracing for Fortuna shocks. Those totally uncontrollable external curveballs. Maybe it's a massive algorithmic shift that tanks your web traffic overnight, or a sudden institutional collapse. To handle these inevitable shocks, we have to rely on a structured daily code governed by, get this, deontic temporal logic, which is really just a highly technical way of saying we need protocols to keep our ethics permanently installed as structural features of our minds, rather than just temporary moods that vanish the second things get tough.
Which brings us to phase 2. Morning, the inner citadel, running from 0500 to 0800. This is how the day actually begins. During these hours, you're in the Eigenvault. That's a psychological term for your private, inner world. The whole goal here is to boot up cleanly. You want to lock in a state of absolute mindfulness before the adversarial noise of the outside world connects to your server.
So your day kicks off with the real-time threat audit, just 20 minutes of quiet observation. But here's the kicker. You don't identify with the thoughts that pop up. You treat every anxiety, every ambition, exactly like an unverified background process running on a computer server. You just label them cleanly. Is this appetite? Is it pride? Is it fear? There's this great example in the text about a project manager who used to start her mornings completely flooded by possible disasters. But once she started labeling these thoughts instead of fusing with them, her emotional noise just dropped off a cliff. She still saw the risks, sure, she just didn't become them anymore. Treating your thoughts this way prevents buggy emotional code from compiling into unskillful action later on.
Right after that, you jump into a quick dream audit, or what they call the oniric interface. Dreams have a funny way of revealing the hidden anxieties we try to paper over with conformity while we're awake. By asking 3 very specific questions: how you viewed others, assessing your actual freedom of choice, and checking where your mind was situated in time, you perform this deep internal verification. And that's essential because it keeps your waking navigation completely honest for the rest of the day. Then you wrap up the morning with premeditatio malorum, basically negative visualization. You mentally picture realistic disruptions, a partnership falling through, an algorithmic shift, maybe a quiet social betrayal. Now, why do this? It's not about being a pessimist. It's to de-anchor your nervous system from status quo bias. By building these mental embankments before the flood actually arrives, when a shock does happen, your brain just processes it as training data, not some devastating injury to your character. Moving right along to phase 3, afternoon, the tactical arena, covering 0800 to 1700. The environment completely shifts here. We leave the private Eigenwelt and step into the social and biological environments, the Mitwelt and the Umwelt. This is where you have to execute tactically under real-world pressure. Out here, the name of the game is Virtu. We're talking operational excellence executed under real, actual pressure. Before you intervene in a project or step into a tense negotiation, you have to mentally map the terrain. You map the informal power nodes and the incentive structures of everyone involved. The manual explicitly advises treating institutional corruption or human flaws as just natural systemic friction. Don't be shocked by it. Just map it out before you try to play hero, or before you fire off an angry email you'll definitely regret. And dealing with that friction requires what they call requisite variety, meaning you gotta match the complexity of your environment with a highly flexible playbook. The manual suggests oscillating between two modes every single day. First, you execute one clear lion move, a bold, highly visible positioning of your authority. Then, you pull off one fox adaptation, a cunning, low-profile strategic shift. Just like a mid-level leader mentioned in the text, using this oscillation daily deters the predatory wolves and actively draws high-trust partners straight into your orbit. While you're making these moves, you absolutely have to maintain an input-output firewall. You apply the dichotomy of control with absolute ruthless precision. If a variable is inside your range of control, you attack it with maximum intensity, with that virtue we talked about. But if it sits outside your range, like say the final market reaction to your product, you execute stoic surrender, amor fati. You focus 100% on the quality of your inputs and completely release emotional ownership of the outcomes to the floodwaters of fortune. But what about the people you're dealing with? You apply a relational filter. The default posture here is to be nice, but highly provocable. If you're in a high-trust reciprocal interaction, an I-thou node, you deploy grace, you forgive errors, you bring value without expecting anything back. But the second you encounter an adversarial extractive dynamic, an I-it node, boom, you immediately deploy a Machiavellian boundary. You enforce proportional consequences, tit for tat. This filtering protects your resources from bad actors while letting your relational capital just compounds beautifully with the right people. Okay, phase 4, evening system restoration from 1700 to 2200. After a chaotic day in the arena, the evening is totally dedicated to repairing our systemic tripwires, auditing our actions, and restoring trust. The workday is over, and it's time to repair. First up, you review the day through a Dasein analytic lens, which is basically analyzing your fundamental mode of existence that day. You journal to see if you acted from a place of authentic being, or if you were just stuck in a mode of having, chasing status or consumption markers. To make sure you aren't being hijacked by this status seeking, which the text calls agonautics, you perform a merit dedication. You explicitly dedicate any successes from that day straight to your high-trust networks, your family, your community. It totally decouples your self-worth from external wins. Then comes a pretty brutal ethical check, the dignity audit. You ask yourself one simple, heavy question. Did any victory today require purchasing someone else's dignity? If you got a win, but you did it by treating a human partner, a thou, as just a consumable object, an it, well, you just triggered a critical failure in your operating system. Failing that audit, that's a mode A failure in your system. But you've also got to watch out for a mode B failure, which is all about mission velocity. Look back at your last 72 hours. If you haven't attempted a single high-leverage lion move in that window, you've entered what the manual calls void drift. Basically, you're losing momentum. And if you hit void drift, you have to re-engage your Machiavellian virtue immediately the next morning to get back on track. Now, if you did trigger a mode A failure by violating someone's dignity, you don't sweep it under the rug. You run a clean status and apology ritual. You take full, unvarnished responsibility for the error. Unlike purely transactional operators who will gladly destroy bonds for a quick win, your goal as an architect is to deliberately repair them and restore that I-thou bond. And finally, you close the day by expressing some quiet gratitude for those uncontrollable fortunate shocks you faced, integrating them as the exact training data that's making you stronger. Finally, we hit phase 5, tragic optimism and resilience. Because look, the true objective of this manual isn't absolute control. That's a total illusion anyway. The real objective is systemic resilience and adaptive variety. This entire lifestyle culminates in a philosophy of tragic optimism. It means saying a resounding yes to life in spite of the entropy, the suffering, and the collapse of all those external institutions that used to promise us safety. By adjusting your internal thresholds daily through these protocols, you keep your mission aligned, even under the brutal demands of the modern world. By running this code day in and day out, you completely shed the role of a managed object. You aren't just some passive node being nudged around by algorithms or driven by unverified anxieties anymore. Through this daily, rigorous execution, you become the architect. You build your own reality. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought before you kick off your day tomorrow. It all comes down to a daily choice, right? You have the protocols, you have the map for your inner citadel, the tactical arena, and your evening restoration. So, Will you choose to actively compile this code tomorrow morning, or are you going to let the world's chaotic background processes run you? Think deeply on that and decide exactly how you're going to boot up your system tomorrow.